Good evening. This is the Dean of all things spicy with Conjured Vaporz Peppers. Happy Thanksgiving. So I'm here to do a pepper review. So this is Capsicum Flexuosum. So these are the smallest peppers I've ever grown. This is my 4th year growing them. They are pretty insanely difficult to germinate, number one. They take forever. The best way I know to germinate these seeds, and by the way, the seeds are black, is in a dilute tea. So, a weakened dilute tea. So, what I do is I brew a cup of hot tea, I drink it, then using that same bag of black tea, I brew a second cup. That second cup, I let it cool completely, and then I soak the seeds in it for about 2 days. Sometimes 3, depends on the year. If the seeds are really old, I'll soak them for 3 days in a weakened tea solution. Remember, drink the first cup, steep it again, soak the seeds in it the second day. I have had Flexuosum seeds germinate 5 months after I sowed them. So this is a wild variety. So your basic varieties that are cultivated are annual, your jalapenos, serranos, bell peppers, etc. Your chinense, habaneros to superhots. Your frutescens, the most commonly known is Tabasco. The Hawaiian chilies also are frutescens. The pubescens, which are your ricotta varieties, Manzano included. And then, Bacatum, which most people call ahi peppers or aji peppers. They're bacatums. And not all bacatums are ahi. So not all ahi are bacatum, I should say. Ahi just means pepper. So this is an ahi too, even though it's not called ahi. So this is one of the wild strains. So even, a normal pepper might be called a dragon's breath. This doesn't really have its name. It's just called Capsicum Flexuosum. Specifically, this one's called green flower. So these flowers are white, and they have green patches in them, kind of like a bacatum. There's also a red flower, white flower with red patching. There's a white flower with some purplish patching. And there's a white flower with some yellowish patching. So there are different flexuosums out there. So they're from the southern part of Brazil. I think I've already said it, but I'm going to say it again. This is my 4th year growing this pepper. And they are the smallest peppers I've ever had in my life. And I've grown a lot of different varieties, including a lot of different wilds. Flexuosums just happen to be my favorite. But anyway, I don't know what else to say really about them except that they're amazingly delicious, not very hot, and more like a berry than a pepper. Most peppers have a cavity, and inside that cavity is the pith and the placenta. These have meat throughout, so they're more like a berry than a pepper, but they are in the pepper family, in the Capsicum genus. So, yeah, phenomenally delicious. I think they taste like habaneros. They're very sweet, but they're not as hot. Well, I take that back. The first year I grew them, I thought they were as hot as a habanero. But it depends from year to year. They change. So this is the only pepper that I tend to overwinter because I don't like growing them. And in the first year, they don't produce much. I think I got, off my first year plants, I think I got maybe 30 peppers. And as you can see, they're teeny. They're, look at the size of my thumbnail compared to them. But your second year plants, 150, 200, 350 pods. Yeah, easily. So these plants can also grow up to like 10 feet tall. They're more like a tree than a pepper plant. And they do get gangly when they start getting that big. But anyway, Capsicum Flexuosum. I can't cut them open and show them to you, so I'm just going to have to eat them. And eating them is the best way I know of to save seeds. The majority of these small ones, this is a first-year plant, because last year, my overwinter, I didn't water it quite enough, and it ended up dying. So the amazing thing about the Flexuosum plant is it can go down to about 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So, I mean, you can have it outside, especially if it's in the ground, in most parts of the U.S., as long as you don't get below 5 degrees. And if you are going to get below 5 degrees, as long as you mulch the heck out of your ground, specifically above the roots of this plant, it should survive. Can't promise you. I bring it into my garage, but Capsicum Flexuosum. Like I said, that first one had no seeds. I might have one here that might have a seed in it. But I have tons of seeds from last year. But another good use for these is you dry them out, and then you just take them and you just kind of crumble it in your fingers once you dry it out into a mortar and pestle, and then you grind that dried out pepper with the mortar and pestle and use it as a spice in your cooking. They're not very hot, but they do have some heat. On average, it can be anywhere from about 7,000 Scoville heat units upwards of 35,000. Again, no seeds. And when they do have seeds, it's usually one or two in a pod, and that's it. I mean, look how tiny they are. I hope everybody had an amazing Thanksgiving. So, if you do grow this pepper, and if you bring it in for the winter, realize that, if it's going to get below 5 degrees, I would say not to let it stay outside below about 10 degrees. If you know it's going to get 10 degrees or colder, bring it inside. They do not grow well inside. They also don't grow well in the winter, but they will still keep ripening the pods if they're already on the plant. If you do bring it in, don't water it much. That's the problem last year, is I told myself that numerous times, and then I let it lack water, which killed it. But because they're fairly dormant, even if you bring them in with the leaves and the pods on them, they still go pretty dormant. They don't need hardly any water at all. And unless you have them in a grow tent in about a 75 to 80 degree space with about 70% humidity, they're not going to grow well indoors. So don't expect these to be an indoor grower, because they won't. And when they do, they're going to produce these little tiny itty bitty peppers that have no seeds in them. Just like a first year pod. But they're so delicious. And just about anybody could eat these peppers. Now, I will say, the one plant that I got to go for its third year, I had some peppers that were somewhat warm. But they're so sweet. Overall, they're possibly my favorite pepper in the entire pepper world. They're just not that hot. Man, they're delicious. Now, if you're going to cook with the spice made from this, it would take a good 85 to 95 peppers for 1 teaspoon of spice. That's how tiny they are. I mean, look at this. Thought I had a pen here. Yeah, there it is. Head of a pen. Could just sit right on the head of the pen. That's how tiny these are. Now again, this is a first year plant. My second year plants and my third year plants did produce slightly larger peppers. They get about that big in the second and third years. So they're still tiny. But it's so tasty. They're about, on average, they're about a quarter the size of an ahi charapita. And in the second and third year plants, they're about maybe a third the size of an ahi charapita. But so sweet, so fruity. It's literally like eating a berry with a tiny bit of spice. Again, very possibly my favorite pepper. But I just ate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7 or 8, and not a single seed. Mm. And this one pepper, which was the largest out of the 8, had a little bit of heat to it. This one might have been higher than a cayenne. With the fact that I could feel the tingle from it. 100% tip of my tongue. But again, if you ever get a chance to grow Capsicum Flexuosum, I highly, highly, highly suggest you do so. Just make sure 2 things. 1, you either do it in a dilute black tea solution, drink your first cup, re-steep that same bag, let the water cool completely, soak it for 2 to 3 days. Or also diluted hydrogen peroxide solution. That will help the scarification. So most perennials, and peppers are a perennial, require stratification or scarification, or possibly both. The seed coats on these and on Capsicum pubescens, the ricotta varieties, both of those seeds being black, the seed coats are intensely strong. So you need some form of scarification. Weaken tea solution, weaken peroxide, hydrogen peroxide solution, or some sandpaper, and gently rub the seed coat on it until you start to see wearing on the seed coat. That's another way to get it. So you absolutely want to make sure that the seed inside the coat can get inundated with water. If it's not inundated with water, because of how hard that seed coat, it will never germinate. But again, I have had a Capsicum Flexuosum seed sprout 5 months after I sowed it. So don't give up on them. When all your other plants are outside already and starting to thrive, it still may pop up. I heard of one person who claimed that their Flexuosum did not jump up out of the soil for 11 months, almost a year. So, probably the most cold hardy of all the pepper varieties, or I should say species, because it's not a variety, it's a species. It's a species. Probably one of the most delicious. And when you have a big tree, one of the most pains in the rear to harvest. They're just insanely just packed with peppers in the 3rd, 4th, 5th years. Of course, I don't know about the 4th and 5th year because the longest I've ever let them go is 3. This year would have been my 4th year with the one that was 3 years old. But again, I let it die. So it is what it is. So I had a first year plant this year. And I tend to only grow one Flexuosum plant. I don't tend to grow more than that. I have grown other wild varieties in the past. This just happens to be the most tasty to me. So anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. This is the Dean of All Things Spicy with Conjured Vaporz Peppers. Thank you all for watching. Again, get you some Capsicum Flexuosums. You won't regret it. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you all got to spend a beautiful day with your family and loved ones. I hope you all have a great night. I'm out.